Hello again, you're watching Everodd Junction, and today I'm doing another one of my how-to videos, and this particular one will be concerning redoing scenery that you may have done some years ago and you've decided you want to rework it. So I've taken a bit of a break from working on the shed and I'm actually back onto the layout. It seems like it was ages and ages ago I actually did some work on the layout, and there's a very good reason why I'm doing some work on the layout at the moment. I was contacted by Hornby magazine a couple of weeks ago, and they expressed interest in doing a photo shoot on the layout and having it feature in a future issue of the magazine. Now, I haven't got too much time before they actually come round and do the photo shoot, so I've been getting the layout ready, and redoing this little bit of scenery is part of that process. All the little bits and pieces and improvements I've made to the layout over the last few days will be covered in an upcoming layout update video, which I hope to get ready fairly soon. And there is a lot of stuff that I've been doing on the layout. You might already be able to see some of the little touches and details and bits and pieces that have been reworked. So I'm now working over here in the TMD area, and generally I'm pretty happy with everything here. It's looking pretty good. But something I want to do is redo this area of grass in the front. Now, you could argue there isn't really much wrong with it, but when you start to look closely, there's a few things that bug me, and once something starts bugging me, it doesn't go away until I fix it. So we'll go through what I don't like about it, and I'll then start fixing it. First observation is, for me, in this area there is too much grass and some of it is too long. Also, the clumps of grass that I added later on, they kind of worked, they kind of didn't. It was a bit of an experiment, it was worth trying out. It hasn't quite paid off, so I'm going to redo it. The main issue with the clumps of grass is you can see the glue. It is rather obvious. This is the sort of thing I hope to turn it into. As you can see the earth and the ground through the grass. The grass is a little bit shorter, it's a little bit more bare, and there is little bits of scrubs and weeds coming through. It just looks a little bit better in my opinion, and gets rid of that sort of long meadow grass effect. There is still long grass in there, but it's also supplemented with shorter grass, so you get a nice varied effect. And I think that has come out a lot better than this. So I'm going to get started on redoing it. This is something that I think most people will get to a point on their layout when they want to redo something, so I thought it made quite a good subject to cover in a video. You'll do bits of scenery, and then, you know, years later, when you are more skilled in the hobby and you've done other parts and you've done them to a better standard, they then start showing up early stuff you did where perhaps you didn't quite have the skills, or you were rushing it, or whatever. In this case, I was rushing it because I had bare baseboard and I just wanted to get stuff covered up. I laid this probably about 3 years ago, and now I've done other areas of scenery on the layout. It's showing this up, and it's noticeable that it's different, or it's not quite as good. So first thing I'll do is get rid of any signage that I want to put back in. Get rid of any little details like that, and then all this green stuff will be surprisingly easy to remove. Okay, so removing the old scenery is quite straightforward. You need a spray bottle with some water in it. Any old spray bottle will do, and a fairly hefty wood chisel. It can be blunt, just as long as it's a chisel, and you can rip this up in a matter of minutes. Okay, so the first thing I'm doing is just soaking up the area. This will soak into the glue even though it's dried, and will just make the process of loosening the scenery a little bit easier. Okay, now you take your chisel, put it on with the pointy side facing right down into the baseboard, and just start rubbing the scenery. And you can see it just starts peeling up. once it starts clumping up and you're starting to make a bit of a mess, just make sure you've got a vacuum cleaner nearby and just hoover up any of it as you work your way along. Okay, so there we are. We are basically back to bare baseboard. There's just a thin layer of the remaining green stuff, and that's fine. We can cover that up, no problem. Now you could just paint this if you wanted to, and then lay your new ground cover over the top of it, and it'd probably look quite good. I'm going to cover it with a thin layer of cork shavings, very, very fine cork shavings, and I've been using them for a little while now, and I've just quite like the effect. They glue down quite nicely, and then when you paint them, it gives you a nice sort of ground, sort of soil effect, and you can actually leave parts of it bare, and it shows through very nicely. This is the sort of thing I'm talking about. You can see around the scrap wheels and rail, I haven't actually applied very much scenery at all, it's just the cork, but painted the right colour. It looks very nice. Okay, so now get ready for applying this cork. I'm just going to put down some neat PVA glue. Don't need to water it down at all, just use it full strength. The ground cover's still a little bit wet from where it's been scraped off, so it'll dilute a little bit, so we'll go for full strength. This is just some home base ordinary own brand PVA glue, nothing fancy. Okay, so I've got some very fine cork shavings. I'm just going to sprinkle those onto the glued surface. This will be our soil, effectively. This is going to be the earth underneath the effects that we will apply later on. The stuff is very light, it does float all over the place, so try and control it as best you can. Okay, so I've left it to dry overnight, and now I'm just going to vacuum off the excess. Now you could take your ordinary vacuum cleaner and put, say, a sock over the end of it or something to recover the material. I've got one of these little battery operated hoovers that you use for like cleaning your keyboard and your computer and stuff like that. They're not very expensive, and you can reuse the excess material. Okay, so now we have our base layer, but it's the wrong colour. So I'm going to paint it, and for that I'm going to use these Woodland Scenics earth colours. So I've got burnt umber and black, and we want a fairly dark mix. You can see the brown really is quite brown, so I take the black, let's put a little bit in there, and then just mix it up until you've got something that you like. Okay, so we've got a nice mix, a nice sort of dark brown. And again, you can use a little bit of water if you want, and that will let the paint creep into the areas that you perhaps can't reach with a brush. Okay, so there we have it. A nice, fresh base layer of soil. I'll leave that for a little while to dry, but if you wanted to, you could go right ahead and just add the top ground cover. The paint will bleed into it a little bit, but it'll still look good. So I'm going to wait a bit, let this dry off. Okay, so I've left it a couple of hours and the paint is now dry, so now I'm ready to do the base layer of ground cover over the soil, and I will be using the usual woodland scenic stuff to achieve that. The bulk of it will be made up with two particular colours called soil and earth. I mix the two together, and those two colours are always the first thing I put down on any surface that needs the green stuff putting on. I tend to get this stuff in the shakers, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, it is really good stuff. The soil and the earth I always use every time I do a piece of ground cover on the layout, and I bought these two shakers over 3 years ago, maybe even 4 years ago, and there's still got some in there. They last for ages as long as you're sparing and careful and recover any spilt material. They do last a very long time, so well worth the money. Okay, just going to make up a little mix here. I've got a little bit of stuff in there already from the last piece I did. This is just a clear plastic lid from an Oxford die-cast car or van. Whenever you buy one of those, you get the little sort of clear plastic box that the car comes in. Don't throw them away, these are extremely useful. I've got loads of them around the layout with all kinds of bits and bobs in. Okay, so we've got two basic ground cover colours in there, and then I've added in a little bit of coarse turf, and those are burnt grass and light green. And they mix together very nicely as well, and that will create a sort of varied effect as you work your way along the scene. And it will be difficult to look at it at first, but when you really start to study the scenery closely, you'll see all the different colours and things going on. Okay, so there it is mixed up, and it'll vary as I pour it out. Give it a bit of a shake, and then just work it along the scene. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I leave some areas a little bare to show the brown base through, and try not to make it look quite as overgrown as I did last time. Okay, so just take a brush and just brush off the excess scenery back onto where you want it. You do the same thing if this was ballasted track or track that you hadn't ballasted yet, or any bits of scenery like a road or anything like that. Make sure you use all the scenery, put it back where you want it, and if you've got too much you can always vacuum a bit off, put it back in the shaker and use it again another time. You can see we've got a bare patch here. I might put a little bit of scrap or something down here, add a bit of interest to the area, and for me personally anyway, that looks far better than just a load of long grass and overgrown stuff. Now I'm going to glue it all down, and I've just put some paper down over the concrete just so that the glue doesn't mark the painted surface. If you had ballast or track nearby, it wouldn't be a problem, but if you've got a flat surface that's evenly painted, you just want to be careful. You see a lot of people using scenic cement for gluing the woodland scenic stuff. Personally, I've used it and it's great, but it doesn't seem to be any different than just watered down white glue. So what I did was bought this once, because the spray bottle is actually really good, it doesn't block up at all, and then when it's run out of scenic cement, just fill it up with some generic white glue, some water and a bit of washing up liquid, and it'll be fine. And that's what I've been doing for the past 2 years. Give it a shake. And then just spray it on there. Try and be gentle with it at first, because you may send your scenery all over the place. And there you go. And of course now it looks rubbish, but come back in 10-12 hours and that'll look really nice. Okay, it's only been a couple of hours and this is already completely dried. It's completely dry. But it is very warm at the moment. The weather is lovely, so I guess that speeds the process up. So what I'm going to be doing next is doing the static grass, but the first thing I'm going to do is the areas of bits of abandoned rail and junk and stuff like that. I try to put that sort of thing down before I do the grassing, because it looks like the grass is growing up in between all of that sort of stuff. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So we'll give it a go on this bit and see what happens. Got a few bits and bobs here. Got some rail, some wheels and some sleepers, which I've just painted and detailed up a little bit. The rails I've gone for a sort of lighter rusty colour. When rail is not in use, i.e. at the side of the line or laying in the bushes or whatever, you tend to find the colour is considerably different. Okay, so I'm going to mix up the static grass. I use basically two colours, a sort of summer green and then a sort of straw coloured autumn colour, and I mix the two together and that gives you a nice sort of summery kind of colour. Now this stuff, the Woodland Scenic stuff, is very short, very good for making lawns in people's gardens and that sort of thing, but it works very well blended with the longer stuff because you get variation in heights and you don't get this one big tall meadow of grass. This stuff is about 4.5mm tall and is made by a German company, I believe. There's various shops you can get it from, but it is not as easy to get hold of in the UK as, say, the Woodland Scenic stuff is. But these two blended together seems to work really well. Okay, so I've applied glue in some specific places. It's nice and wet, which is necessary for the ground wire from the static grass applicator. So we'll just tap that in there. Okay, now I've turned on the applicator, so we will lay the grass, and it's important not to go crazy. Less is more. You can always put more on if you're not happy. Okay, grass is laid in. It has worked its way around the detail quite nicely. This doesn't always work, but appears to have worked this time. So I've got to wait for the glue to dry. Again, it looks rubbish at the moment, but it'll look much better once the glue is dry. I will quickly hoover up the excess grass, because it does tend to get around, and then it'll start sticking to stuff. And finally, while the glue is drying, a little bit of coarse turf. It's a mix of olive green and medium green. Just put a little bit as and where it looks good. Again, you don't need very much. It just creates the effect of bushes and weeds. You'll occasionally get some really long blades of grass, just discard those. I'll go over these with a watery mix of PVA glue from the syringe, just to soak them up and make sure they don't go anywhere. So I've left it overnight, and there is the finished product. All the glue is dried, and I've been over the whole thing again with the vacuum cleaner, and got rid of any bits of loose grass and scenery and such that hadn't got stuck down. When you do that, it thins it out a little bit more as well, and you just get an even better effect. I've also added a little bit of grass just in between the tracks, just to create a little bit more of an overgrown effect. And as you can see, with trains moving in and out of the yard, it looks quite nice. Again, easy to get carried away on that, so I've made sure it's nice and thin. There's another view of it. Again, you can see it's quite sort of light and patchy, but it still creates a nice effect. So there you go, that's how to improve a bit of existing scenery without damaging the layout. Hopefully you enjoyed it, perhaps got a few hints and tips from it. And as you can see in the shot there, I've been doing all sorts of bits and pieces all over the layout, and there is loads more out of shot that you can't see. So I will follow this video with a layout update as soon as I can, as and when I get all these little bits and pieces completed.